so much for joining today. We're going to take some time to look at a Cisco DUO demo, and we'll walk you through sort of the agenda real quick. We're just going to do a brief introduction to NIC. Most of you are probably familiar with us, so it will be a quick recap. We'll do a demo on the actual product, on DUO itself. We'll leave some time for Q&A, and then we'll walk you through some next steps for anyone who is interested in setting up a trial. We'll walk you through sort of what that looks like. And a little bit about NIC. So I'm Aviv Bruno. I'm a director of sales here for those of you who might not know me. We are a team-owned and team-led company, right? So really, we're an employee-owned company. We built this company, and we're an ESOP. So very invested. Each employee is very invested in how we do, and our relationship with our customers is really important to us, right? We've been in business over 20 years. We're pretty local to the Southern California market, very heavily focused on SLED with lots of experience, and we've served over 50 districts in this area. And then we also, not only provide solutions, IT-based solutions, but we also do the contracting and the installation. So one-stop shop, which everyone loves. And that's really just a little bit about us. We've worked with, several of you over the last 20 years. So we're really excited to continue to sort of show you, new products as they come along, and educate you and help transition, if it's something that you're interested in. Next.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So I apologize. That's me. So I'll introduce you to Chris, who's going to walk us through our DUO demo today.
Awesome. Thanks, Aviv and team. Appreciate everybody being here today. Again, my name's Chris DeWitt. I'm a partner SE. I support Trevor on the partner level. Basically going to kind of go over an overview of DUO and probably a little bit of demo stuff as time permits. So if you're not familiar with MFA or multi-factor authentication, it's basically a way to ensure the person that's logging in is actually who they say they are. And we'll get into that here more in a little bit. So how does DUO deliver zero trust? So basically, we try to protect everything we can. So kind of first step is, ensuring that the user is somebody that you trust, that MFA portion that I was talking about, or 2FA, depending on what level we're talking about as far as authentication. Then basically how we can step into doing things like establishing trust with the devices, establishing device hygiene, so ensuring that the laptops, desktops, what have you, are patched properly, if they're configured properly from a security perspective. We can provide that analysis, stepping beyond multi-factor authentication. And then lastly, what applications do you want to protect? Well, you want to protect them all. You don't want to just protect your on-prem or just the cloud. You want to protect them all, and DUO does that quite well. And we'll go into that a little bit more later as well. So when we're talking about multi-factor, a lot of people are probably familiar with these, the kind of the old school hardware tokens. We do provide those as well. Actually, they're quite common in higher education as well. So if you've got students and things like that maybe don't have a smartphone, or for whatever reason, or maybe they're not allowed to use it for an authenticator, that is an option as well. But I guess I should get to, we basically provide, there's actually, I guess it shows 8 different authentication types here. There's actually a 9th, which is a bypass capability. So if, say, the push authentication, which DUO developed back in, I think it was 2009, let's just say maybe the phone goes dead, or they lose their phone, or something along those lines happen, they can also be issued a bypass code in order to authenticate if they do need to, which is a differentiator for us. And all of these different types of authenticators are, of course, you can enforce those with policy. You can deny their usage or what have you. So like phone calls, SMS, those two types are kind of frowned upon by NIST as far as being less secure. But there are instances that those some customers do need those types of authentication depending on their environment. And you can actually have up to 100 different authenticators per user if you so choose. I know that's probably a little excessive, but if somebody wanted to do that, they certainly could. We do recommend you usually have at least 2 authenticators, just one as a backup. So what do we protect? So this is just a tiny subset of what Duo can protect from a multi-factor perspective. Mostly what we want to show here is, okay, we've got tons of VPN solutions here. If some of my fellow Cisco compatriots were on here, I usually tease them a little bit with this, but Palo Alto was actually, before our acquisition, was one of our closest authentication partners, and they still continue to be. So part of the reason Cisco acquired us is because we are a flexible methodology for authentication through tons and tons of different applications. So we're not just Cisco, obviously. Obviously, protect all sorts of different cloud applications, email solutions. Here's just a handful of on-prem solutions. And then we have we have an SSO solution that will tie into all of these other authentication solutions as well. And then last but not least, if you have a custom application in your environment, we do have an API to support those other applications that might not be listed here or in our conventional documentation. So Duo prompt overview. So before we get into the prompt, there's usually a big question, and I'll actually kind of show a little bit of this more in the demo, but how to enroll users in Duo. So once you tie into your LDAP, AD, what have you, you can enroll those users into Duo several different ways. Automatic enrollment is one. You can manually import them with a CSV or something like that if you want to pull a kind of a spreadsheet in. But I'd say probably our most common enrollment type would be self-enrollment, which is quite easy. Just a matter of downloading the app, the Duo mobile app, onto a phone or tablet or whatever have you, and then it literally steps the user through that enrollment process. And if there's questions on that, I can certainly elaborate going forward. So this is kind of what our enrollment looks like. It's super easy. Basically, the person goes to whatever application that they're attempting to log into, and then basically you're going to get prompted to download. Generally, the conventional methodology is to download the Duo mobile application. You'll basically scan a QR code, which will register your phone with Duo, and then at that point, you can continue to log in. More or less as you normally would. You'll just once you log in, you'll get asked if this is you essentially trying to log in, and you'll click yes or no. And I can demonstrate that here in a little bit as well. And kind of an announcement that was made, I probably should add a little different slide for this, but there's a concept known as trusted endpoint, which is now included with all of our license types. So before it used to be in what was called Duo Beyond, which has now been rebranded as Duo Premier. This trusted endpoint capability has been included with all licensing. So what is that? So trusted endpoint essentially allows you to differentiate between your organization issued hardware. So whether it's a phone or a tablet or a laptop, you can basically identify which is your, I guess, internally issued devices versus BYOD, and then you can set up different policies to allow or disallow access based on those device types. So a good question to ask yourself, well, what is your BYOD strategy? I hate to say, a lot of times most organizations I know don't really have one, or they're not really sure about what they should do. The nice thing here is, since trusted endpoint is included with every license type, you can leverage the BYOD policy setup. So when I say that, say you've got your Office 365 application, a corporate issued or corporate access or organization access only. You can set up a policy that will only allow those trusted endpoints in, and then disallow, say, the BYOD device if you so choose. Or you can set up policies that will cause them to step up to maybe a higher challenge authentication type. So maybe you don't want them to use a phone for authenticator. You can make them use a FIDO 2 key, like a YubiKey or something along those lines. So you can see MDM on here. Basically, where I'm going is that this trusted endpoint kind of provides an MDM-like solution. We don't do things like we're not looking at emails, we're not looking at contact lists, texts, any of that kind of stuff. Simply, basically, all we're doing is two things: ensuring that device is actually an organization issued device. Plus, we're doing these security checks. This here happens to be a screenshot from an iPhone. So we'll check to see is the OS up to date? Is the mobile app up to date? Are the biometrics enabled? Is screen lock enabled? Is the device jailbroken or rooted? Excuse me. And then if this was an Android device, there would be another one here that would indicate whether the device was actually encrypted or not. So the other thing we do not do is also we do not do device wipe. So if you do need an MDM, oftentimes you can just get that portion of it for maybe your C-level folks, HR, that kind of stuff. It reduces the cost, which MDM is expensive. Data wipe does sometimes bring in some legal issues as far as people not wanting somebody to access their phone. And it's just lots of extra work that's associated with an MDM solution, to where we're just simply identifying that the device is actually up to date, configured properly, and that it's a organization issued device. So, current topics: Duo and Zero Trust. So we've been having a lot of conversations around cyber liability insurance. So what is cyber liability insurance? So basically, it provides your organization with coverage that will basically insulate you from some of the losses due to a cyber attack. So just a small example here: cyber liability insurance will cover over ransomware, data breaches, network damage, things of that nature, and the costs associated with resolving them. And this is kind of an eye chart. I'm sorry about that. But basically, this is kind of just an indicator of what some of the subcomponents of security that Cisco can provide. And obviously, we're talking about multi-factor authentication. That'll come in and play a serious part in actually securing all of these different types of access. So basically, whether you're talking about your data backup and recovery, that might be more managed by your the vendor that's actually selling you the solution, and so on and so forth. And of course, we can protect our remote desktop access, email, endpoint security solutions, firewalls, all that kind of stuff as well. And I guess I'll pause. I know we kind of got a Q&A thing at the end, but I'm totally happy to answer questions if I don't know if they're coming in the chat window or anything like that.
I don't see any questions at the moment.
Okay.
I can unmute everybody temporarily if you want to do that. Just give me a second.
Yeah, I'm pretty loose on when the questions come.
No, so while you're working on that, Sean, with the cyber liability insurance, Chris just mentioned, Duo, we have the good, better, best. So if there is the MFA requirement, which most cyber liability companies require, we're happy to check that box, as well as upgrade so you have enhanced visibility into your network, which Chris will dive into here in a little bit.
If anybody has any questions, please just type them in the Q&A panel, and we'll try to get those answered for you. And then if you have a verbal question, you can go ahead and I think there's a way to raise your hands, and then if I see that, I'll unmute you.
Perfect.
Awesome. So, and I guess I probably should have mentioned passwordless. It's kind of coupled with the authentication types that we were talking about a little bit earlier. So this basically is the next evolution in authentication. So it's the multi-factor authentication is typically a combination of your username and password, and then something you have, which would basically be authenticator. The next evolution, which is passwordless, and I think we've had passwordless, I think, as a official offering, I think, for a little over a year now. Kind of the important thing with that is it's almost like a three-factor authentication type, so truly multi-factor. So it's initially you'll start out with your username and password, but then it's a combination of something you have, which in this case it's my phone, or it could be this YubiKey that I was showing earlier, and then it's something that you are. So in the case of my phone, well, it can use my fingerprint, or it can use facial recognition, which would be that's something you are, that third factor. Or in the case of this YubiKey, it'd be one of my fingerprints as an example. It's easy to use. Essentially, it does what it says right there. It's passwordless. So once you establish that as your authentication type, you never type in a password again. That's all encrypted and happening out on the cloud. It's virtually impossible to attack. And well, like I guess I kind of touched on it. It's basically a step towards a truly digital identity. And like authentication cards, those will pretty much go away. And I should add, and that would include things like Touch ID if you've got a Mac, or in my case, I guess I have a Windows machine. That'd be Microsoft Hello. You'd leverage that as a potential passwordless solution as well. Kind of another new thing that we kind of come up with somewhat recently is risk-based authentication and verified push. So risk-based auth, and I'll touch on this here in a little bit in the demo as well. It's a little easier to show than to just talk about it. But essentially, this was actually put forth because of a small breach that Cisco actually suffered. Fortunately, it wasn't anything critical. It wasn't really any important information that was taken. But essentially, somebody did have they were fish bombed. And if you're not familiar with fish bombing, that's basically where, let's say somehow I get a hold of your organization's username and passwords, and they use Duo. And this is going to be a problem with every single multi-factor solution out there. Is I would then try to log in to say your one person's account, and I just do it over and over and over again, and they would keep getting those authentication requests on their phone. And finally, just from push fatigue, they decide, oh heck, I'll hit yes and log in. Well, this verified push is basically to help prevent something like that, or make it more difficult. So what's going to happen here is if say somebody's getting those push bombs, a risk-based authentication can identify if. So let's say I'm being the one being push bombed. If I kind of flip the story, somebody's fish bombing me. I keep hitting no, and I keep hitting no, and finally, after probably a couple of these, it's going to notice that there's a pattern here. Well, the hacker or whoever it is keeps trying to go into my app. Well, they don't have my phone. So what happens is, instead of just getting a conventional yes, no prompt for authentication, I actually have the bad guy technically will have to punch in a code. So on my phone, which they won't have. So if this is the hacker and I've got my phone, they can't punch in this code in order to complete the authentication. So if I see this and I know I'm nowhere near my computer, I'm going to hit not. I'm not logging in, and then that'll get reported off to the NOC or the SOC or whoever. So and this has been out, I think, since let's see, the wireless fingerprinting, which is part of this, that came out in the beginning of May, and then this, I think, came out like February timeframe, if I recall. So I guess short of any questions, I will bounce over to the demo. So if you're not sorry?
I was going to say, I'm not seeing any questions yet at this time.
Okay, cool. So if you're not familiar with Duo or if you haven't seen its admin panel, and I think there's going to be a pointer to get your own free version of this shortly. This is essentially the dashboard. So you'll get some of the basic information that you expect. So the dashboard includes a few things like updates on changes, new features, things of that nature. So like you can see here, in this instance, the verified push isn't enabled yet, but you have that option to basically enable that feature if it's available. So you'll see things here like you heard me. I was talking about the bypass users before. So that's somebody that lost their authenticator. Maybe their authenticator stopped functioning. They can be issued a code and allowed to authenticate, say, once or over the period of a set amount of time, et cetera, et cetera. Locked out users, inactive people, so on and so forth. I'll get into this out-of-date OS stuff here in a little bit, but you can see like how many admins there are, authenticators, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, just basic information on how many permitted and denied authentications over time, so on and so forth. And then down below that, the authentication log. This is just a subset. If you want the full authentication log, which is also located right here in the report section, which I'll touch on in a little later. This basically gives you kind of your typical information. So you'll see here that this user was approved for authentication. There's a username. This is the application that they accessed. So they were VPNing into an ASA. You can see what operating system they're running. And if I expand that a little bit, the device health application is not installed in this case. But so we don't know if the firewall and all that stuff's running, but I'll show you what that stuff is a little bit later. But ultimately, you can see here's the browser they're using, what IP address they're coming from, that kind of stuff. And then consequently, you can see what authentication method they used. Here they used push. There's the phone number they came from, so on and so forth. And then I guess just as a comparison, we'll say that here we have a denied. There's the username. Maybe they accidentally clicked on the application, didn't mean to, so they just denied it. Or maybe they might have suspected somebody was trying to break into their account. Who knows? But that would be something for your SOC or your NOC to investigate. So as we talk about Duo, so there's three different license levels. There's Duo Essentials, which would not include Device Insight. The next level up from that would be Duo Advanced, and then Duo Premier is the top end. Device Insight is included in the middle and upper tiers. I'd say this is kind of where the rubber meets the road a lot for Duo. So Device Insight, what is it? So here you can kind of see that here's how many Mac OSs, Windows OS, Android, iOS, how many trusted endpoints, things of that nature. And you'll see that, okay, we've got end-of-life information here, out of date, up to date, so on and so forth. So this is all configured by policy, and I'll show you that here in a little bit as well. So if you want to actually, you could set theoretically Windows 7 is up to date if you wanted to, but probably not, or I guess that'd be over here. But you probably wouldn't want to do that, but it is a possibility. And there are some organizations that do require older OSs for whatever various reasons. And then I should point out, so if you want to look at these devices like end of life, I can click on that and I can actually get actionable information of, okay, here's the OS that's running, who the user is. If I want to, I can click on that user and get their phone number and contact them if I need it. So plenty of useful information right at your fingertips. But if I kind of drill into the mobile devices, you'll see some basic information too on breakdowns, very similar to the overall Device Insight. You can see how many iOS devices or Android, so on and so forth, are in your environment. iOS on one side, Android on the other. I'd say probably one of the best examples that I found for this is I was dealing with a defense contractor who issued Androids as a corporate device, and they were insistent that, and this is a couple couple of years ago, I guess now, but they were insistent that they were baselined on version 10 of Android. Well, when we went to do a POC on this, we discovered that this wasn't the case at all. They had roughly 4,500 phones that were issued. I think almost 4,000 of them were actually, well, at the time, are running on version 7. And if you want to hear the wind get sucked out of the room at a defense contractor, is to find that you have a bunch of phones out there with they're openly accessible via tons of malware that they certainly did not want in their environment. So scary, but at the same time, they got actionable information, and they could literally just click right here and pull down a whole list of what those devices and what issues they might present, other than just OS type. Laptops, desktops, I won't go into this too much. It's kind of a similar view. You got Mac on one side, Windows on the other. You scroll down, you can see what kind of browsers they're using, things of that nature, what that distribution is, and if they're up to date or not. Applications. How do you protect one? So this is fairly easy. You can hit protect an application here or over here, the big blue button. These are the applications that are currently protected, but let's just say I want to protect a new one. Since Duo is part of Cisco, I usually pick on Cisco just because there's tons of stuff that we obviously have tie-ins. If I'm looking for the firepower FTD VPN capabilities, the documentation's right here. I can just simply click on the protect, and basically it's going to start walking me through the process of setting up VPN for your FTD.
Chris, can we take a look at any applications that would be K-12 specific, like specifically student information systems? I know Aries is one that gets used a lot. There's Aries SIS right there. Second from the bottom.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So just want to show that there are a lot of applications that K-12 use on a regular basis that are already preloaded in here.
I think that link's broken. Lucky pick there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, always on a demo, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess on that note, one thing I do usually cover is I go to duo.com. So if you want to go to duo.com/docs, this will actually show you what all of our native integrations are. So if you scroll down a little ways, I kind of already beat the dead horse with that, the remote access VPN, but and of course Microsoft integration and so on and so forth. But we get down into these cloud service provider stuff. So this will actually you click on any of these and it's going to take you right into the configuration documentation for what you might be looking for.
I know we had a question earlier about, is there any on-premise component that's required? And I know for the local Active Directory authentication, there would be a proxy service that you'd want to install on-premise that communicates to the Duo cloud, but Duo would also support cloud native authentication as well, right? So if somebody's using Azure AD or whatever it's called now, Entra, and Okta or Ping or something like that, right? That all integrates.
Yes, definitely. I mean, just if you're probably going to pick on two IDP solutions out there, Okta and Microsoft are probably our two biggest competitors, but they're also our two biggest partners. So we play well together and collaborate tons. So yeah, I don't know if I could really add too much more to that. As far as like adding users, yeah, I can just touch on that. So there's many ways to get people in. So like this is basically just a basic add a user. You can add one at a time. Probably not real practical for a large organization. So I'll skip right to, well, what typically do people do they use? There's a handful I've seen out here that use the import user where they just pull in a CSV file. But to our conversation that we're having now, the most common is a direct directory sync. So here, well, you can see that there's a number of AD sync tie-ins here, but I mean, depending on what you're going to leverage, the build outs are right here. So it's real easy to just go through that, and it literally walks you step by step through any of those deployments. Let's see, I probably should touch on policies real quick. So you'll find that Duo really hangs its hat on easy to use pretty much in all aspects, especially when you look at our policy controls. So here, the global policies, essentially, you got to at least meet this bar in order to access whatever applications you're protecting. And then you can, of course, build custom policies for here's Workday, LastPass, so on and so forth. But basically, you'll find that in any of these policies that are set up, they all have the same configuration capabilities. So if you're going to set up a policy after you determine that you have everything set up the way you want it, you can require enrollment if that's the phase you're at. And then you can set your authentication policy, so you can just either turn 2FA off if you want to, or you can just flatly deny access to an application for whatever reason. Maybe there's a maintenance window or something like that. You only want admins, since you'd have two policies set up, one for admins and one for regular users. So you might deny access to the user base if this was a user policy for, say, your Outlook solution. And then, of course, we have geofencing capabilities, so you can make this as complicated as you want. So, say you want to require 2FA in the United States, but let's say we'll go with Brazil. Let's say, and you'd probably put the rest of the countries in here as deny access as an example, unless maybe you do have people that travel for whatever reason. You can open up those specific countries. That said, trusted endpoints, that's the part I was talking about before that kind of provides that MDM-like functionality and how easy it is to basically set up. So at this point, it's going to come on as a default as allow all endpoints, and then you have the choice of require endpoints to be trusted. So the certificate-based trusted endpoints kind of going away. We're basically leveraging the Duo mobile app and then the Duo health application, which runs on Windows and Microsoft, to act as the identifier for the trusted endpoints. And then, of course, you can use Cisco Secure Endpoint if you have that in your environment. You can, as an additional security leverage, if you have it. Let's see here. The device health application. So when I was talking about the Duo mobile app, it's kind of the similar thing, but it's for Mac OS and Windows OS. Basically, just you can let's see here. So basically, you can turn it on or off, but you can require, say, it's going to do a security check to make sure that the firewalls, if it's off, if the firewall's off, all that kind of stuff. If you so choose. So just basically doing that hygiene check on laptops and desktops as well. So let's see here. Operating systems, again, super easy to manage as well. When I started with Duo was pretty much strictly a Mac or Apple shop. So why would you allow Android devices? So if I simply uncheck that box, you're basically going to cut off all the Android, since theoretically you shouldn't have any Android on your system anyway. But I'd say that isn't the case with Duo anymore. But since I do have an Android at this point, the capabilities of basically checking that device for its hygiene, basically making sure that we're updating the operating system. You can choose. Let's see here. You can force immediate updates, or you can give a grace period up to a year, things of that nature. If you just like that defense contractor that I was talking about before, let's say they didn't want anything below .10, you can basically deny them access as well. if you so choose. And it's pretty much the same thing as you go down to iOS devices, Mac OS. It's pretty much the exact same type of configuration. So again, simple, easy, uncomplicated. And browsers basically determine whether you're going to allow or deny particular browsers for access to applications. It's simply a checkbox as well. So let's say I decided I want to, we allow Chrome, we'll uncheck Firefox to so that'll be allowed to be used as well, as an example. And then of course you can put a pop-up in the authentication prompt to warn users if their browser's out of date. And then, of course, there's options there to provide a grace period of up to a year. The nice thing about this is if I know it wasn't, I think it was like my first year with Duo, there was actually a Chrome browser 0 day. You can switch this to 0 day. So when people come to log in, they're going to be forced to update to the current version of Chrome at that moment in time. But say when everything's copacetic, you can set that to a grace period if you so choose.
Chris, I'm wondering if we could just sort of broaden the conversation a little bit, and I wonder if we can talk through some common scenarios that K-12 institutions might run into, and how we can protect them with Duo, right? So I think just about everybody has access to Microsoft MFA, right? It's included with most of their enterprise agreements. Sometimes they get it for extremely, low cost or free. So I'm wondering what Duo can add on top of that.
Sure. Yeah. So just, I guess I can kind of talk about Microsoft and Okta in sort of similar terms. So the part where it's heavily discounted or free, we kind of have a saying, there's no such thing as a free puppy. You might get the dog for free, but the veterinary bills aren't free, and the puppy food's not free, and the dog toys and all that kind of stuff aren't free. And when I say that, I mean the cost of actually integrating these applications into the environment. So if we talk about Microsoft, Azure's a great product. We're not going to or their MFA is a great product as well. But there are some challenges that they face. So Microsoft does really well with MFA within a Microsoft environment, whether it's their cloud stuff or their on-prem stuff. But once you start drifting off into non-Microsoft products, that's where you kind of start running into some friction. And I guess taking that conversation another step further would be to talk about risk-based authentication. Microsoft has risk-based authentication. Duo has risk-based authentication. Here's the huge difference, though. A very large percentage of Microsoft's risk-based authentication, it actually has to be processed in their system for somewhere, well, depending on what we're talking about, it could be anywhere from 24 to 48 hours before Microsoft determines that a login was bad, and it was a breach, which means you've already been breached. The difference with Duo is we're doing that check in real time at the login. So if there's somebody trying to breach, they're going to get stopped right then and there. It's not going to be a notification 24 or 48 hours later. Okta, kind of not quite the same story, but there's some similarities. Okta does fantastic from a cloud MFA perspective. They do that quite well. Where they differ from Duo is when you start to protect kind of on-prem applications, that's where things get the friction kind of comes into play again. That's where Duo does quite well with the on-prem. And I think you kind of touched on the Duo Auth proxy, which is just an app that you can install on a Windows or a Linux machine that would be in the environment. So that's really about all there is to do as far as adding anything into an environment from a Duo perspective. Pretty straightforward.
Right. So we know that the best way to protect people would be you have an MFA, you have an app, maybe it's on your phone, maybe it's on your watch. You can do a push, right? SMS is probably not the most secure anymore, right? Because people can clone phone SIMs and things like that. But how do we protect somebody who doesn't have a mobile phone or doesn't allow their phone to be used, right? We have situations where teachers don't want their personal devices to have school-based software installed on it.
Certainly.
So how would we protect somebody like that?
So, I mean, there's a couple options. I mean, well, SMS is an option if they have a cell phone and they don't have to install anything on there. But yeah, I have encountered times where the push authentication is somebody doesn't want to, or they legally can't install an application onto a user's device. So some of your other options there are you can go with the conventional hardware token, and when I talk about that, that's kind of everybody's usually familiar with the old school RSA tokens with the six or eight digit codes. Those are certainly an option. They just, I guess, tie it to your keychain. Other options would be, this actually need to update this. U2F is gone, I think, as of February. It's basically been supplanted with FIDO2, which again, I was kind of talking about that earlier, is these YubiKeys. They come in all kinds of different factors. This one happens to be YubiKey Bio, which has biometric capabilities as well. So it's more leveraged for the passwordless type solution. But basically, I guess in summary is you can do hardware tokens or U2F or I guess you could do a phone call or SMS if there was cost concerns with these other two solutions. You'd have to buy those whereas the phone call might be readily available, but the phone call and SMS, I think you touched on, is a more risky solution from potentially being stolen.
Right. So just to simplify it, one thing that could potentially be done for, let's say, a teacher who has to take a laptop home, and we want them to securely connect to their services, but they don't want to use their personal phone for authentication, right? So they could have one of these YubiKeys, plug it into their computer, and then they have to, touch the key when it's time to, or push a button on it, and it will validate their fingerprint or something with biometrics, something to that effect.
And yeah, you actually, a light came on. I completely skipped right over biometrics. So it's not uncommon for pretty much any device anymore to have some sort of biometric authentication capability, which is your WebAuthn authentication. So that could be on the phone or tablet or whatever. They don't have to necessarily install anything from an authentication perspective there either.
Got it. And so going back to the conversation of what does K-12 want to secure, right? I'm thinking everything from their student information system. Obviously, at the perimeter, you have your firewall with a VPN, right? Anybody who connects remotely wants to be. You need to authenticate that they are who they say they are when they're putting in their password. Email accounts. So Google, Microsoft, both of them work with Duo, right? The financial. So sometimes the finance applications we know are controlled by the county office of ed, but maybe this is something that can be worked with those organizations to do some 2FA. Really just I think hitting on that low-hanging fruit, those items that I just mentioned are probably gonna be the majority of your use case scenarios that can really help you, right? I mean, for the most part, you really don't want anything stolen from the SIS, and we've seen that before where Ares has leaked information or whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's and then you start talking about, and of course, I'm not familiar with the full suite of education applications, but I mean, I'm sure it's like in even in the enterprise world, there's lots of legacy applications that maybe they don't support any authentication at all, but they have critical information that you want to protect. We have what's called the Duo Network Gateway that can actually basically puts up a reverse proxy in front of those applications that will enforce a conventional login if you want, and then also add in multi-factor or passwordless capabilities in front of an application that normally wouldn't even have any kind of real security capabilities whatsoever. So if they want to isolate and protect systems like that, we certainly have that capability as well.
Okay, so we have a good question. So we have an organization has about 1,200 students, and you got to imagine, 1,200 teachers and probably a good amount of admin as well. And they want to protect student information system like Power Schools. Would they require each individual to be licensed? How does that work?
Yes. So yeah, Duo is a per user license. So we don't care how many applications are involved. So literally, if there was there could be one user, or there could be 12,000. Doesn't make any difference. You can protect an infinite number of applications if you so choose. But yeah, there is a per user license requirement.
Okay, so seat-based license, but unlimited usage.
Yeah, precisely. So if they had one user, they could have 5,000 applications. If that kind of gives a good.
I believe there's also a small fee for telecom charges if you need to send SMS as well.
Yeah, there's a certain pool that's included with each user. I don't remember that off the top of my head. So initially there's no charge, but if they do need outside, if there's, I don't know, say there's 10,000 SMSs and they use those all up, then yes, then they would need to buy a larger block of telephony credits for the SMS or callback.
Got it. And I apologize if I missed this, but did we touch on the single sign-on portal where you can have the applications just listed for each user as they log in?
Well, the nice thing here is, and I'll share this with everybody as well. We didn't really cover that too much, but if you're not familiar with Duo, we do have demo.duo.com. It's free. We're not collecting any information. You can go in there. Anybody can go in there. We encourage our partners as well as customers to go in here, and they can actually, in the case of single sign-on, and we don't really have time to go through it right now, but this configure SSO will actually walk somebody basically through the entire process of configuring what it's like to configure single sign-on, get that authentication tie-in, and then taking the next step of, okay, how do we protect the application? And forgive me, I forgot these are a little slow on load up. There we go. So this would walk you through protecting an application step by step, and then we'll just kind of skip to what the user is going to see. One moment. So we'll go through the single sign-on process. So we're going to click next. We'll put in our password and log in. We'll get our prompt on our phone to authenticate. Successful login. So at this point, we've got these three applications that are integrated in for single sign-on capability. So at this point, I could click on any of these, and I wouldn't have to log in anymore. I'll just add a caveat if there's maybe application here that you want to increase a higher level challenge like passwordless or something like that, you can actually alter the policy for the specific application and just make it a little more difficult to get into that next application if you so choose. But conventionally, at this point, I can click on any of these applications and go right into them, and you won't see anything from another login request.
Yes, so really just a very convenient way to have one login. You log in once and you have all your applications there at your fingertips, right? I know a lot of school districts will do that for students. So all their students will have a single sign-in portal like that for all of their different, virtual textbooks and whatnot. But I don't think it's commonly done for the admin side of the house with all the enterprise applications. And so this is a way to do that with your enterprise.
And I'll show you more of a real world one. This is actually one of our internal SSOs. So this one, I'm logging in with my Windows Hello. I know you couldn't see me touch my fingerprint scanner, but that's what I just did on my laptop. So essentially, this is what it would look like. So these are all the applications that are available to Chris DeWitt, and like most of these, I'll be able to, like, if I wanted to click on, let's see, I can go to one of our Cisco internal sites, which I think is actually another separate SSO. So there should, see, there says I didn't do anything there. It's completing my login for me. And this must going into there must have been an uplift on authentication requirements for this one, but so I picked a bad one. But the nice thing here is you can actually manage your authentication devices from here as well. So it's gonna make me log in here because it wants to verify that I'm actually I'm going in to try change my access to for different authentication.
And I see that it's Windows Hello, so that can be anything from the fingerprint to the camera, right? Just within the operating system itself. It's biometrics.
Yep. So, like, I have a number of keys here. I think this is a FATN, which I think is already in there, but I could click add a device. I'm going to add a security key, and then basically it's going to prompt me through inserting the key and going through the process of registering it, and it's easy peasy done. If I wanted to delete stuff, I can do this as a user. I don't have to call a help desk. So kind of great on the ROI sort of thing as well.
Okay, so I think we have a few minutes left in the webinar, so maybe we want to talk about the next steps in terms of making a proof of concept available to everyone, and where we want to go from there.
Perfect. And just before we do that, does anyone have any questions? We'll just give everyone a second here to chime in, I think.
I'm always for a question. Oh, awesome, because I kind of like a game of Stump the SE. So.
Well, we have a question specifically about the POC that we're offering. You know, what the scope entails. I think we'll have to talk about that a little bit. You know, whether or not that will actually entail the SSO dashboard and things like that. I think what we're going to do next is we're going to look for everybody to sign up. So if you're interested in getting a POC, basically a free 30-day trial with implementation services from NIC partners and Cisco, go ahead and you can sign up at the link that's shown here, or you can just talk to your account manager, whomever invited you. Either way, just express interest, and then we'll get some engineers lined up and set up a time that works for you, and we'll get a POC going. Now, I know we have a predefined scope for what that is. If we have any special requests, I think we'll see if we can try to do that the best we can. So sometimes, you know, when we start getting into multiple systems, it can be a little bit time consuming, and but we'll see what we can do for that.
And just so by default, and I don't know if maybe they set up something special for you guys. The default for this, when you set it up, it should set you up with the middle tier of the Duo Advanced. But there's I don't. Trevor, do you know if we set up anything specific as far as Advanced or Premier?
Yeah, usually we go Advanced.
Okay,
but we can always, you know, depending on what sort of trial you'd like to run, we can always adjust that as needed. We can. Yeah, Sean. Yeah, Sean. To your point, we do have our sales engineers, Chris, myself, all available, ready to help out with any POC as needed.
Perfect. Thank you. So just a reminder, so post-webinar, you'll get an opportunity to sign up, or of course, obviously, you know, the AMs will be reaching out from NIC. So if it's easier, you prefer to just work with your local rep, we're happy to do that. Really, we just need to know if it's something that you're interested in, and we'll help like, Sean and team said, we'll make sure that it fits what you need, and hopefully, we can accommodate for anything outside of the scope. We're here to work with you and make sure you're taken care of. So thank you all so much for joining, and look forward to working with you all on this moving forward. And thank you, Cisco team.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Everyone, if there's any more questions, please feel free to reach out to me or your account manager, and we'll try to get them handled. And we'll definitely talk about the proof of concept, and if you're interested in it, we'll work with you one-on-one. So thank you very much for your attendance.